Actually, I think we ought to take a minute and realize that all that's happening here today, whether it's on the filming or this or that, it's all been done by the Sanders Group. That's the film group that takes care of all this and does make sure it comes through. So it would be that video and everything else that's on the webinar. Let's have a round of applause for the Sanders Group. All right, and finally, our last and maybe our best presenter. You said I had to say that, didn't you, right? Okay. Tim Ward. Tim Ward is a retired member of the State Board of Pardons and Paroles and currently a correctional consultant. Tim is the former commissioner of the Georgia Department of Corrections, and Governor Kemp appointed him to this position in 2019. Tim Ward began his career with the department in 1992 at Scott State Prison as a correctional officer and eventually rose to chief of staff. Ward went on to serve as Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council and is one of the 28 commissioners nationally on the American Correctional Association for the Commission of Accreditation for Corrections. He's an active member of the Southern States Correctional Association, the Georgia Professional Association of Community Supervision, the American Correctional Association, and the Georgia Prisons Warden Association. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Savannah State and a master's in public administration, Columbus State University. And with no further introduction, Mr. Ward.
Right. Thank you, Joe. Well, I was kind of figure out who Joe was talking about for a second, but that's me. Man, what a great day. To see the progression we're making now as it relates to mental health and to the building industry. It's just awesome to be a part of that. And I hope I can get this clicker right, so I have to match the green to go forward, right? Okay. A little bit about my background. Joe talked about that a little bit. Kind of crazy. I had just graduated from college, was in grad school, working with my dad in the funeral home business, and we farmed. And so got married, had a little kid, and then my wife said, hey, Tim, we need some benefits. And so that's how I wound up in the Georgia Department of Corrections. Been a great career, and then finished off with the parole board. But what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is the rising population of mental health in the prison system and how I dealt with it when I was a commissioner of the Georgia Department of Corrections. What do we know? The number of individuals with serious mental illness in our prisons now exceeds the number in state psychiatric hospitals. As Joe in the film so eloquently presented to us, we became the de facto mental health hospitals in the prison systems. Many of the mentally ill individuals in prisons who have been treated in the state psychiatric hospitals for years and institutionalized are now in our prison systems. Untreated psychiatric illness often gets worse. Those who suffer from mental illness are 9 times more likely to be incarcerated than hospitalized. We talked about that because they get in that cycle and they can't work themselves out. And that's the awful part about this system is the mentally ill. They shouldn't, like Joe said, they shouldn't be there. They should be in a mental health hospital. Mentally ill offenders average higher rates of infractions for violating prison rules. In a lot of times when you see our infractions in the system as far as disciplinary reports and things like that, they really can't help it, but they fail to follow instruction and things like that. They get in that cycle and it's awful. Research tells us severely mental health offenders do not do well in long-term restrictive housing. We're getting away from that word of segregation. It's restrictive housing because they get in that cycle and they spin, they churn, they can't get out of it. The mentally ill is disproportionately represented in segregation units. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit about today of my creation, I created about 7 specialized housing units to try to get all of my mental health offenders in the system out of those restrictive housing units. We changed the culture from a lockdown mentality to a more pragmatic and therapeutic approach. We developed treatment plans for those, each individual specialized treatment plans for those guys to make sure we dealt with that mental illness. Ensures that the mentally ill population receives treatment in a therapeutic environment. And like Joe said, and everybody here knows, and I sat next to the lady next to me, and she was nodding her head at everything that was presented in that film. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. I'm going to show you some stats from the state of Georgia. I left in 2023, but you can see those numbers. The total population that are mental health in the state of Georgia right now is 13,204. I got the numbers before I came on stage. They have a little bit over 52,238 offenders in the state of Georgia right now, and 25% of that population is mental health in the state of Georgia right now. So you can see that number. It kind of flattened out in 2021 because it was COVID, but you can see it's a steady rise in the mental health population in the Georgia Department of Correction. And if you look at any state around the country, especially in the southern states, that line is pretty much going to mirror each other, going the same way, which is going up. Again, that's just another way to look at it, 25% of that population. And this is some stats. Once offender, in the state of Georgia, once offender has been identified as requiring mental health services, the offender is thoroughly evaluated and diagnosed and assigned to a level of care based on treatment needs. If you are ordinary, no issues, you're considered what's called a level 1. Level 1 is you don't need any mental health service, anything of that nature. And this next one got me in trouble. Level 2 mental health, okay? Level 2 mental health outpatient services are indicated when offender's ability to function in general population is mildly impaired due to mental illness, okay? I was speaking with the House and Senate in the state of Georgia, trying to get some money for some budgeting stuff. And I was trying to explain the different levels of mental health. And so I made the fraudulent slip of saying, some of you guys in here are level 2 mental health. And that really didn't go over well, okay? But it's true. Some of us might be level 2 mental health. If you take your medication on a daily basis, you can get out, you can function well in society. And so I tried to do that, and that didn't go over too well. And I got kind of scorned by the governor's office by calling the state representative mental health level 2s. Your level 3, those are those individuals that you have to put in a supportive living unit. Most of your level 3 offenders, they take medication 3 times a day. You literally have to walk them to a pill line, give them that medication, take a light and look in their mouth and make sure they're not cheeking it, and make sure they're taking it, because a lot of times what your level 3 mental health guys do, they'll hoard the medication, and then in the summertime we call it the psychotropic highway, meaning they're take an overdose so they can get in, go out to the hospital and ride and see the lights at night. Your level 4s are those individuals that are in your supportive living units. I mean, they're maintained on a unit. You have to bring them their food. You have to bring them their medication. They stay on that unit. They don't go anywhere. Their programming, everything is brought to them because they cannot really function in a regular general population situation. And these numbers are old, but they still hold true as far as the breakdown of the different diagnoses of the offenders in the Georgia Department of Corrections. The vast majority, and those are some of the things: mood spectrum disorder, psychotic spectrum, post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, that's it's really big in the prison population. Personality disorder, anxiety, and intellectually disability. And I looked at the numbers before I came, and so it's still floating between 23% and 25% of the Georgia Department of Corrections has a diagnosed mental health diagnosis in the state of Georgia. But the next slide is going to really surprise you because the number didn't change, and it's related to our female population. 67% of the females in the Georgia Department of Correction has a diagnosed mental health classification. A tendency when they come into the system, they tend to have a more pronounced mental health diagnosis once they get in that controlled, confined environment. And some of those things are mood spectrum disorder, psychotic spectrum, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and personality disorder. And the biggest one is anxiety with a lot of them. And so how do we attack that problem in the state of Georgia? What we did, we sat around, and it took several years to form it, and we developed specialized mental health treatment units with a strategic initiative to try to get a lot of those individuals out of those supported living units and concentrate on that mental health diagnosis. We significantly reduced and consequently removed severely mental health offenders from long-term restricted housing into a more therapeutic environment. And one of the things that we always talk about, we got 2 sitting secretaries here, Mr. Inch and Rob Carter, and we always talk about the 8th Amendment, which is the conditions of confinement. And if you want to get a lawsuit, if you want to get in court, a violation of the 8th Amendment rule, and that's the conditions of confinement. That's what the DOJ always hit you on, and that's while a lot of you all are going to be in a lot of business, because again, especially in the southern states, we have not kept up with the infrastructure upgrades that we should have. So now we're backing ourselves into some Eighth Amendment lawsuits with the DOJ about the conditions of confinement. Developed 7 specialized mental health treatment units. Offenders are provided clinical program using a multiple disciplinary approach. Okay, the multiple disciplinary approach meaning is you got to get everybody on the same page. Now, from a clinical standpoint, we can figure out everything, but if the security piece is not aboard or what we're trying to do, it's not going to work. So when you talk about a multiple discipline approach, that means everybody from food service, from counseling, from security staff, everybody has to be on the same page as far as the delivery of that specialized treatment program for those individuals. Program use incentives to encourage pro-social behavior, okay? The specialized mental health treatment units, the clinical approach, we developed individualized treatment plans for each individual that had a mental health diagnosis. We put them in structured environments. You're going to see, we're going to talk about that a little bit when we go through the program. And the best thing that you can do for a mental health individual in your charge is creating a routine schedule for those individuals. And because repetition is your friend in prison when you're dealing with mental health. Give them a good routine to work with. And this could be as simple as making sure that you have your security staff that are assigned to those units, they're trained in mental health, because you get the wrong individual in there, that can really disrupt that unit. Again, a multiple disciplinary approach, immediate consequences, achievability, and you do a lot of second chances with these guys. And I think, Joe, I think my mic went out. They can't sometimes control their behavior, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Sometimes have impulse control. They can't control that. I was in some training several years back, and it was a psychologist, a psychiatrist that had mental health issues. So they developed some training that mimicked the behavior of the voices that individual was hearing. So I was a participant in the training, and they had us to wear like some headphones with that white noise in the background. And it was like, if you were giving me instructions like, I want you to get your clothes, I want you to go over here, I want you to pick that bucket up, but then in my ear somebody said, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. So you got an individual with mental health needs, and they're trying to function and go through daily processes, and they got those voices talking to them, and they can't control those actions, but they're going to get penalized for those actions. Next, we had levels and phases, and what we did, we focused on the functionality of progression through the levels and not calling them phases. So we had 4 levels. That was basic, intermediate, advanced, and the ultimate. And and a lot of times those individuals bounce back and forth through those different phases, but making sure that they went through those different levels and make sure they went through those. Next was we started out at Augusta State Medical Prison, and we developed a dementia and traumatic brain injury unit. It was 25 beds. And one of the things that we're seeing in our state, because of longer sentences, we're having a lot of old offenders that are developing dementia. And a lot of times you don't address those individuals, and if they're in general population, they're going to get preyed upon about the different offenders. So we saw a need for that. So we developed a dementia and a traumatic brain injury unit. It's about 25 beds. Talk about some of the criteria to get in there. Offender who have evidence of dementia, decline in previous function, extreme memory loss, and also a history of brain injury. A lot of times these guys commit these crimes, and during the act of the crime, they get seriously hurt and sometimes have brain injuries. Must have evidence through diagnosis of documented history of head trauma, declining memory or cognitive ability. Must have a diagnosed dementia or medicated condition, and on a mental health caseload, consider a long-term placement. And, whoever thought that, you would have to deal with dementia and Alzheimer's in a prison setting. And that's the new normal now. I think you still run prisons the same way, but you got to operate in a different mode. And that's the mindset we got to start developing moving forward, because I had the unique ability, and not only being the commissioner of correction, I had the ability to go on the parole board. And, we would have medical reprieves and things, and the guy would have dementia. everything. But his crime was such that we could not release him. So we knew, even though he had dementia and Alzheimer's, that individual was going to die in prison. So that burden falls on the state. So, and again, knowing our prison system, our infrastructure was not designed to support a guy or a female or a lady that had dementia or Alzheimer's. So that's one component when we're doing the design of facilities, more space for those individuals, because they're going to stay with us for a longer period of time, and we got to design that fit for those individuals. Next was the severe personality disorders. Again, it's a 25-bed facility, and ASMP was our medical facility. So we had the capability. We had a lot of services at Augusta State Medical Prison. So a couple of my units were over there because we had expertise and especially the special skill resources to do with over there. So I had a couple of those units over there. Again, developed individualized treatment plans, activity therapy, individual therapy, increased awareness of mental health condition, and those increased post-social condition and behavior and evidence-based treatment. And everything that we do now, all of my counterparts around the country that were commissioners, every program that we ran, we made sure that it was evidence-based. Okay, so everything we do is evidence-based. And the admission criteria was offenders experience difficult emotional regulation of dysfunctions in relationships, must have a principal diagnosis of personality disorder, and then also we developed what's called a tier unit for those guys that are some of your most violent individuals. And so the creation of these units were helping get those individuals out of those restrictive housing units and get them in an environment that we can provide treatment to those individuals. The main focus point is providing individualized treatment to those individuals so they won't decompress more in those situations. And that was a 25-bed unit there. And the criteria for those were you had to be a level, go back a second, I'm getting a little bit too fast. Okay, bear with me, I'm there. Okay, yeah, and that was a severe personality disorder unit at ASMP. And the criteria for those, again, they had to have the principal diagnosis of personality disorder. Augusta State Medical, we also have a severely and persistent mentally ill unit there. Admission criteria, again, had to be level 3 or level 4. And those, when you say level 3 or level 4, those are our most severe cases of individuals that have mental health diagnosis. And next, this one is Phillips State Prison. It's our impulse control disorder unit. Those are those individuals there, the criteria for those offenders who have been sent out numerous times to a hospital due to chronic and serious injurious behavior. That's the most problematic population to deal with as far as relates to mental health, besides the ones that we're going to talk about next, about the more violent, impulsive ones. I think I told the story the last time we were together about the self-injurious behavior. We had an individual that was at Phillips State Prison, and we try to give a lot of rewards and things of that nature. We had an individual that he created a guillotine, okay? He created a miniature guillotine out of popsicle sticks and a disposable razor. A lot of times, mental health guys are very creative. They can create and form pockets in their gum line, and they can cheek razor blades, disposable razor blades. And a lot of times you can't detect it. But this individual, he had taken some popsicle sticks, he had created a little guillotine, had taken a disposable razor, put the disposable razor in, and it worked completely fine. And what he did next was he placed his penis in that guillotine and he cut it off, a complete cut. And so we had to airlift the guy out to the hospital. We had to reattach it, and then we had to prevent him from trying to rip it off again. Those are the things that we have to deal with when you're talking about those offenders who have those impulse control issues in the facility. But we created a 25-bed unit for that, and I can safely say it's still there. He didn't try to take it off again, so we made sure we concentrated on him. Development and cognitive delayed unit that's down in Valdosta. That's a lot of our guys that are really intellectually disabled, function at a real low level. And those are some of our sadder cases. Those individuals get in the prison system again. Though we talk about people churning in the system and can't come out, they don't have the mental capacity to either defend themselves or either protect themselves. So we put them in a supported living unit down there. And the best thing that really is very successful in dealing with those individuals is our pet therapy program. You know, we have a very big pet therapy program. We deal with those individuals and try to make sure that they are adapted and do that. And the criteria for that, the offender who we're working with are able to, again, adapt in normal GP population, may have principal diagnosis related to neurodevelopment disorder, intellectually disabled, and must be on a mental health caseload. And also, once we do all of that, we have what's called a transition unit down at Valdosta State Prison. It's 25 beds, and if they go through all those levels, phases, we put them in that transition unit and try to get them working way back into general population. And that's one of the things that we were doing, trying to do that and get them out. And a offender who's successful complete any of those specialized mental health treatment programs, hopefully that we can get them back out, get them on the medication, and be productive in the general population. The next one is a severely mentally ill, aggressive, assaultive behavior program. That's at my SMU unit. Those are some of the worst of the worst. I think before I left, I did the number of homicides committed by those individuals, and I think I had 180 in that unit, and collectively they had almost 600 murders on the street and inside the facilities. We had one individual, I'm gonna call him DA, because I won't put his name out there, but he killed his roommate in the county jail, came in the system, was in a mental health unit. I think somebody talked before about when you're doing construction of new facilities, the single bed setup is ideal because a lot of our cells in the state of Georgia are two-man cells, and a lot of our homicides and things that are happening in two-man cells with roommates. And with this individual, DA, in the system, he killed his roommate in diagnostics. Poor paperwork and documentation. He was able to do it again about 6 years later when he went to a supported living unit and killed another roommate. And then after that, I guess the light bulb went off with my intelligence team and go, we might not need to have this guy with a roommate. You don't think so? And so, but those are some of the individuals that create the most problematic management issues for a prison system. And then when you talk about design and structure of facilities, those are all the things that come into play when you're doing that. My role with the Pardons and Parole, one of the neat things about the Pardon and Parole Board, every individual that has a mental health diagnosis, because in the parole board, guys have what's called a tentative parole month, meaning they can get out, they do everything they need to do, they can get out before the time. And then they have a max release date that when they hit that max release date, he got to go. But with a mental health offender, if we know he's a level 3 or level 4, we request that they do a psych valve on that individual. If he's eligible for parole, if he's non-compliant with his case plan, we can extend that individual out until he adheres to his case plan, is compliant with his medication, and then extend him inside. But if he's at a max date, we can't do anything. We have to max him out. But they do an excellent job at the parole board of making sure they have a warm handoff in the community, making sure that if there's resources out there, a community service board, they can do that handoff to the individual. And so that's a little bit about what I do. And I tell people when I end this, as a commissioner, my thing was my commitment to the public was my mission was non-negotiable. We had a non-negotiable mission to protect and serve the public. And basically that what you all have too is a non-negotiable mission to help us protect and serve the public. And I'm so pleased, Joe, what you're doing now, how you all are taking a proactive approach about the confinement business is just unique. If I would have had a lot of these tools 10 or 15 years ago, it would have made my life so much easier running a prison system. But I commend you all what you're doing. I commend this conference about the innovative ways. The prison system is the same, but we got to run it and do it a different way. And we got to do it. And from what I hear the last day and seeing the products that you all are designing and think about, just simple as changing a light fixture with a mental health guy, that goes a long way, you know, because if you don't, that individual acts out, commit suicide or do something like that, then it's going to be a taxpayer issue because we got to pay out a big settlement, and that comes out of my pocket, your pocket, Joe. Everybody's paying for it. So why not fix it on the front end, and then the back end is better, okay? Thank y'all so much for having me, and that concludes my presentation. Any questions for anybody? Got one?
I got one, which
Okay.
is, they ask, what do you see as issues with corrections infrastructure as it relates to management of mental health offenders?
A great question. One of the things like I talked about, you know, we have offenders that are serving longer sentences. So you're going to have the aging population. You're going to have the guys with the dementia. Our infrastructure as it stands right now, it wasn't designed for that, especially in the state of Georgia. The vast majority of our facilities are retrofitted old hospitals or something else. They want to build to be a prison. So we got to build space that's compatible for that aging population. I mean, space for people who want to walk and hurt themselves, but be able to get out and get mobile and get the programming. And the other big issue is we see now that cognitive groups and programming space is going to be a must when we design and build these new facilities. Single bed living conditions for those individuals, because again, I think with the introduction of technology, we're creating a race of introverts. People don't want to talk to each other. They'd rather text you, but they won't talk to you. So that's one of the biggest challenges. How do we improve this infrastructure to help support this aging population that we have? Okay?
We have another question right out there.
Okay? Mm-hmm.
The analogy you gave about Kevin hearing voices in his head.
Mm-hmm.
He's torn between listening to you and who's ever talking to him inside his head. I think that's really important to take away. So that leads me to ask, what sort of training are correctional officers being provided and other support staff so that they know that these things are happening and they can recognize them and treat people accordingly?
Yep. One of the things, great question. One of the things that I did, and we saw right before with the onset of COVID, we saw a rise in the state of Georgia of suicides. So we used to only offer training to those individuals who had direct contact with the mental health offenders. But I made it mandatory for everybody from line staff, clerical help, to get mental health training, whether it's an in-service or a class, because and my thinking was, even it's beneficial on the job, but also we're a microcosm of the real world. When the suicide rates went through the roof in the free world, they went through the roof also inside the prison. So it was a dual thing. It could help you in your personal life, but also aid us inside the facility, because a food service worker might notice something that maybe the hall officer missed, or vice versa. A teacher teaching GED might notice something with a student that somebody else missed. So I made it in the state of Georgia, I made it mandatory that all staff got some level of mental health training to try to combat that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is it a rise in mental health everybody's talking about, or is it that we decided to also measure it more, that we are seeing this kind of rise? So what I mean to say is, was there always like an unknown amount of, or not mapped amount of mental health issues that now we are kind of getting into? That's for the part of the statistics. And the second one would be, because I had this discussion with the mental health facility that I'm renovating. They want to get away from the hospital. Then there's a discussion they should be close to the hospital in case something happens. But when I see this, what the story you're telling me, it seems that we also might need like a penitentiary system to be close to a mental health facility in some way, because they have so much overlap.
Yeah.
So the first one was about the statistics, and the second one about proximity of facilities.
Yeah. You know, I think what's happened also, the stigma of mental health, the label stigma of having a mental health issue has been taken off. And so now people are seeking mental health treatment more. It's not a stigma to say, hey, I got a problem, I need help. And so that's what you see. And like I say, prisons are a microcosm of the free world. Well, you know, it just takes a little time to get beside the wall. But then also, when you take an individual off the street and put him in a stressful environment like incarceration, that it's going to exacerbate whatever underlying conditions they have. And then the other question is, I think you're saying, do we need to develop mental health hospitals? Yeah, but I don't think, Joe, you help me with this one. I don't know if the appetite is out there for that, but the need is there, because the decentralization of mental health hospital movement, it gained so much traction because some horrible things happen in those mental health hospitals. Okay, when I came to Millersville, Georgia in 1992, they had what's called Central State Hospital. It was a campus. I'd never seen it before in my life. It had almost 11,000 mental health patients. But they did a lawsuit by one individual that was mistreated. Rightly so, she was mistreated, and then they decentralized the whole hospital, and then they just went to group home in the community, and then they went from the group home to the community into the prison system. Yeah. So, but there is a need, but a lot of people I think there's going to be a movement to do something like that, but not on a big scale like we had in the 60s and 70s, because some specialized treatment beds are needed for those most profound cases. Okay?
All right. That was
Thanks, sir.
fantastic, my
Thank-
friend. As
okay.
always,
Thank you.
good job.
Based on the mental health, I think there were 5 facilities you highlighted. They were each about, I think, 25 beds, so that's 125 beds in total. How many mental health beds does the state of Georgia have? Because at 25 per 100,000, you probably need 20 times that.
Yeah, that's only inside the prison system. They have a small footprint in the state of Georgia. I think roughly it's about 450 beds for free world beds in the state of Georgia. What they're doing now, some legislation just passed in the state of Georgia, because most of the sheriffs are complaining about getting those individuals in their county jails. They want to get them to be triaged before they bring them to county jail. So they're trying to create a regional concept, 100 beds here, 100 beds there, short-term stays, just to triage the individual, see if he comes to stand trial and doing things of that nature. But so roughly in the free world, it's about 450. I have roughly, they have in the Georgia Department of Correction, there are probably about 600 what we call specialized mental health beds, meaning they're supported living units, okay? And those are for level 3 individuals. But I went a step further and treated those small specialized units for those harder patients, because it's about 10% that really cause all the issues that are diehard mental health cases, and did it that way, okay?
All right, thank you, Tim. And with that concludes our seminar for the day, but I wanted to do a couple things. First, I've had a couple people already ask me, could we get a flash drive of that mental health video? And my answer to that is yes. All you need to do is contact Melissa Miller at Pauley Jail, who's the one who set this all up. And then number 2, especially for the people on the web, but also for here, if let's say you're a sheriff from a county and your county commissioners couldn't make the show, but you know they're going to be the ones writing the check if you're going to do anything for an addition or a new jail. You can also contact Melissa Miller and get a flash drive of the entire presentation today. That way, when you get back home, you can actually sit down with your commissioners, or if you have a client that you're trying to close a deal with, you might be able to bring them some of this information. So once again, you would contact Melissa Miller at Pauley Jail. And with that, since we've all worked so hard today, although some people haven't worked as hard as others, Dave Scholl, we're going to go back out underneath the tent, and this time we're going to have a little happy hour so everybody can relax and have an adult beverage or two. Yes, sir, you have a question.
I just want to say, if everybody could give a big hand of applause to Melissa for all the hard work that she did and the Pauley Jail team for putting this together. And with that, I think it's time for cocktails.